Right now on Tider Insider TV, an Alabama target makes his decision. Did he roll with the Tide? Plus, the Crimson Tide has set a date to start fall practice. We'll fill you in on that and more right now on TITV.
Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
It was an exciting week for news on the Alabama campus. Fan Day was announced for Sunday, August 3rd. Gates opened at 1:30 p.m. It's always an anticipated event for fans who not only get to watch practice at Bryant-Denny Stadium, but get autographs from Coach Saban and the players. And with that, we say good evening, everybody, and welcome into Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm Gary Harris. Tonight, again, Pepsi Cola. Remember, for the refreshing taste of Pepsi, just pick it up next time you're at your local grocery or convenience store. I need to get a big hit of that because we got a lot to talk about. Some breaking recruiting news is coming up, Rod, but first, it always gets the ball rolling when the first practice date is announced, and that schedule came out this week. The Crimson Tide will report on Thursday, July 31st, and practice will begin the next day, Friday morning, August 1st. They'll have two practices. Most of the veteran players will be there that morning at 9:30. Then that evening, most of the newcomers and the freshmen will practice, as kickoff is just 4 weeks away in the Georgia Dome when Alabama takes on the West Virginia Mountaineers in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. Only two members of Alabama's 2015 class have unknown statuses. The recruiting class, that list narrowed to one today. Montel McBride has failed to qualify academically, and he's going to go to a junior college in Iowa. AL.com, the first to report that. Bo Scarborough of Tuscaloosa, the only member of the class whose status has not been made known yet. And I guess we'll just have to wait to see on Friday if Bo Scarborough is with the Alabama team that day or not. Speaking of the class of 2015, 3 commitments expected this week, Rodney, involving Alabama targets. The first came this afternoon with Tallahassee, Florida's Ronnie Harrison. Interestingly enough, Harrison goes to Florida State University School in Tallahassee, but he had been a commitment to North Carolina, Rod, for about a year. Opened up that commitment, narrowed it down to the Tar Heels, LSU, and Alabama. You felt strongly that he would choose the Crimson Tide, and indeed this afternoon, that's exactly what he did. Talk about what Alabama's getting in this rangy, very athletic safety.
Well, they are getting a very athletic safety, Gary. He has great height. He's 6'2". He's probably actually over 200 pounds versus the 192 you see there. But again, he's weighed in at about 205 recently. And he's a guy that's played a lot of positions in high school. He's versatile. He's played quarterback, been a dynamic quarterback down there. He's also played cornerback as well as safety. He has great ball skills. Gary came to Alabama's camp in early June. Now, Lance Thompson had done a great job of recruiting him, convincing him to come to the Alabama camp in June so the Alabama staff could eyeball him. And when he did, he put on a great performance. I mean, a great performance, certainly wowed the Alabama staff, earned an offer, and became one of the top targets. And, he was committed to North Carolina, as you mentioned, for over a year. They had done an outstanding job building a great relationship with him, but Alabama had always stayed in the mix with him. And when it came down to it, it was pretty much Alabama, LSU, and North Carolina. He decided that he was going to roll with the Tide after a visit with his mom and his brother a couple of weeks ago, and then he announced it today. So, again, I think it's a huge pickup, Gary, because safety is a big need. You talk about losing Nick Perry, Jarek Williams after this season, the likely departure of Landon Collins early to the NFL. Alabama needs safeties. You got Sean Burgess-Becker committed, Deontay Thompson, and now Ronnie Harrison. I mean, I think they've done an outstanding job of filling those needs.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Obviously, Coach Saban loves to build depth at every position, but the secondary is vital for their scheme defensively, particularly now with all the spread options. You're sometimes playing, 6 defensive backs and maybe even a hybrid linebacker or two, almost the equivalent sometimes of 7 defensive backs. You got to have a lot of them, and you got to have guys that can really play.
Yeah, and they had a need. All these guys are really athletic. Gary can run. As I said, extremely athletic, long. They've got great cover skills too. And as I mentioned, you're talking about a guy, Ronnie Harrison, who could also probably play cornerback, and that's unusual. You're talking about a guy 6'2" at his size, 205 pounds, who can do those things. But again, I think Alabama's done extremely well in addressing that safety spot because it was really an important year to do that.
So another big pickup for the Crimson Tide, and that is the norm since Nick Saban arrived at Alabama. And one of the Tide's big selling points is always coach's ability to get prospects to the next level. Ultimately, that's what top players are interested in. And NFL training camps getting into full swing. A lot of former Alabama players on rosters and in the news. One was newly acquired Cowboys linebacker Rolando McClain. He had previously retired as a Raider, then as a Raven. Now he's back trying to earn a spot with Dallas. He spoke on Saturday about his struggles to get his life in order and get back in the game that he now says he loves again.
Life is about struggling. Life is about getting knocked down. You just got to get back up. And these things that I've been going through is no different than anything else I went through in life from a young age. So it's just adversity. You learn to fight through it, help you grow, become a better man from it.
You know, life's about opportunity, creating them and taking advantage of them. And that's something we emphasize to our players. He's no different. He's been in different places the last couple of years, and to be honest with you, that really does not matter to us. The way we're going to evaluate him is what we see starting on this practice field this afternoon. His slate is completely clean with us.
Another former Alabama linebacker, C.J. Mosley, is looking to make some noise at Ravens camp. Mosley has been impressive so far and hopes to add not only to Alabama's rich tradition of linebackers, but to the Baltimore Ravens as well.
That's one thing about me coming from Alabama. It's all about tradition. You know, I always had great defensive players, great linebackers came out of Alabama. And it's just for me to come to another great team, another great defense, and the history and some of the players that they still have now on the team, just for me to add on and just try to keep that tradition going. So I'm just doing what I can to fit in.
Former Crimson Tide safety D. Milner struggled through his rookie season with the New York Jets. Injuries, lackluster play, and that New York media is brutal. They didn't waste any time jumping all over him. But he says that he's ready. Doesn't lack confidence, that's for sure. Asked over the weekend who's the best corner in the NFL, and D replied, "It's me." D claims to be completely healthy heading into the season, Rodney, and we know when he is healthy, he has got outstanding ability. And if you're going to play corner up there in that league against those receivers and quarterbacks, you better not lack confidence, huh?
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
All right, maybe he'll have a big year. Maybe all those Alabama guys will have a big year. As we talked about, that continues to help recruiting when they see players from that particular school doing well in the National Football League. Well, more Tider Insider TV is on the way, including a visit from a very special guest who has an outstanding book coming out. And after the break, more on that book with Christopher Walsh, former sports writer for the Tuscaloosa News, BamaOnline.com, and now Saturday Down South. And he's got a book that basically says Nick Saban is the best, maybe ever. And coming up, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. You see the information on the screen. Interact with Tider Insider TV right now. You can call us 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Email us TITV@WVUATV.com or reach out to us on social media. Twitter, #TiderInsiderTV. We certainly want to hear from you. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. More on the way after this. It's been an off season for other coaches to take their shots at Nick Saban. From Bob Stoops to Steve Spurrier, they've all gotten in the act. This week it was Rich Rodriguez of Arizona knocking Saban's stance on the hurry-up offense, calling Saban's injury concerns, quote, a farce. Well, they say it's lonely at the top. Nick Saban, arguably the best coach in the game, is proving that's the case, which is why our special guest wrote a book about Nick Saban versus college football. Christopher Walsh of Saturday Down South joins us now, SaturdayDownSouth.com. Chris, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I want to start out just by asking the obvious question. You've got the book in front of you. Nick Saban versus college football. Not versus the SEC, not versus a particular coach, but versus college football. The story behind the title.
Well, okay, there's twofold. Number one, the original title was supposed to be Nick Saban versus the NCAA, and I was like, that sounds too much like a lawsuit. We have to change that. Right. But what happened was 2 years ago when Alabama was at the national championship down in Miami, I got a call from my publisher, and Triumph Books had done a book called Tom Brady versus the NFL, and the book is all about making the case that Tom Brady is the best quarterback in college football, or excuse me, in pro football history. Well, they asked me if I could do a version on Nick Saban, and my first reaction was, no, I can't. But what I could do is make the case that if there was a Mount Rushmore of college football coaches during the modern era, that Nick Saban already would be on it. And wow. They were, yes, let's do that. And that's what we have.
All right, I'm picking up the cover of your book here, and it says the case for college football's greatest coach, and it has 7 coaches here: Bobby Bowden, And all of them have lines through them. Bobby Bowden, Steve Spurrier, Woody Hayes, Urban Meyer, Newt Rockne, Bo Schembechler, and Tom Osborne. All great coaches. Now, I want to ask you, Chris, where's Coach Bryant's name on here? Where's Bear Bryant? You didn't mark through that. So does your book address that, Saban versus Bryant?
I will just come right on and tell you Bear Bryant's definitely one of the 4 on the Mount Rushmore. In fact, if there was a Mount Rushmore, he'd be the first one on it. So I think at this point, you can say that Nick Saban is in the ballpark with Coach Bryant. I think if he wins one more national championship, then we could sit here and have the argument over and over again about who's a better coach in college football history.
All right. I was mentioning it early, Chris, and you were at SEC Media Days. We've all been watching what's going on now. This is the age of social media. It's the age of Twitter. So I think oftentimes we hear Coach say something, and for lack of a better term, it is blown out of proportion. People are waiting on it to pounce on it and kind of build these feuds. For his part, Nick Saban hasn't taken a shot at anybody else. I mean, the only thing that could even be construed as that was the fact that he said maybe trying to get the guys ready for the Sugar Bowl was trying to get them ready for a consolation game because they had lost the Auburn game. Still, I guess like we said, when you're on top, you have to be ready for this. I don't think it bothers him, but a lot of other coaches can't seem to get through an interview without bringing up Nick Saban's name in some capacity.
Well, I think it's a few different factors. Number one, you've got the SEC Network. You've got the playoff that's coming up. You've got coaches that are basically trying to, jockey themselves into a better position. And the other thing is, Alabama for the first time in 3 years is not the reigning national champion. I think a few of these coaches are getting in some shots while they can.
I tell you, when you're writing your book, I'm sure when you're comparing coaches from different eras, you have to look at what Nick Saban has done in a limited, versus, say, Coach Bryant. You look at, the unlimited scholarships. I say unlimited. Bryant could sign 35, 40, whatever it was, and Coach Saban's been limited to, signing 25. Obviously, there are greater limits. I mean, do you address that in the comparisons?
Yeah, it's really hard to try to compare coaches from different eras. And actually, I separated out of the book. Part 3 of the book is how Saban compares to the coaches of the BCS era. And I mean, we put the numbers right against each other for each coach. And then we have a section in the book on how he compares with really a lot of the all-time greats. And the older that you get, the harder it is, obviously. I mean, when you talk about before the poll era, before there was a draft, and so forth, I actually, in the introduction, I kind of go, you know what, it's our Mount Rushmore is for the modern age, but I do like, if we had like a second team, this would be the second team, and then also if we do like a section on the innovators of college football, we do a Mount Rushmore on that. So kind of try to cover the whole thing.
Yeah, Rodney mentioned that earlier, but that's why you don't see Rockne, you don't see Bryant marked through on the first page, because like you said, they're already on there. This is more of the modern era of coaches and where Coach Saban matches up directly against them.
Well, I'll tell you what, actually Rockne's name is on the cover and his name is scratched off.
Oh, it is.
The other two coaches on my Mount Rushmore are Bowden and Rockne. And the guy that really, I was up night after night trying to go through it, trying to figure out a way to get him on, was Frank Leahy from Notre Dame, the great coach. But in my mind, if you took Frank Leahy's numbers and if you put him up against Bowden on just the 14 years where Florida State was, ranked in the top 5 every single year, the numbers are almost identical. I mean, they're like eerily close. Well, Bowden's been in, coaching for 30 plus years, and I think that's got to count for something.
Well, you've written a lot of books. We're getting up against the clock. I know this one's special to you. Talk about how people can get it, book signings, anything you've got coming up, because I know it's just now, it's fresh on the market, as we say.
Yeah, I saw it for the first time in a store over the weekend at Barnes & Noble here in Tuscaloosa. I've got a book signing coming up August 6th at the Alabama Booksmith in Birmingham that I'm really excited about. And I'm going to try to do as many signings as I can around Tuscaloosa throughout the fall.
Well, I just saw it for the first time a few minutes ago. I'm anxious to read it, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are as well. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, guys.
All right. Thanks to Chris Walsh for being with us. Next on Tider Insider TV, a former Tide hoops great lands on his 7th NBA team. That's a resume right there. We'll give you the update. And next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. You see the information again on the screen on how you can get in touch with us, 205-348-9882. And again, don't forget to pick up Nick Saban versus college football. I can't wait to read it. Would have liked to have already read it, but just now getting to see it. So, Chris, you got to get me a copy. We'll be back with more of the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV, right after this. All right, when you're about to be on your 7th NBA team, it'd be easy to call that player a journeyman. Another way to look at it, though, is, hey, a lot of people see value in Mo Williams and want him on their basketball team. Williams announcing via Twitter that he's headed to the land of 10,000 lakes to play for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He spent last year with the Portland Trailblazers. This will be his 7th team. He's going to be 32 years old, but the guy can still shoot the basketball. Great presence on the court. Veteran player that's been to the playoffs. So Mo Williams sticking around for a long time in the NBA. All right, let's head to our Med Center hotline and take some phone calls. First up tonight, Rod, our buddy Plato from Panorama. Hey, Plato, what's up?
Hey, good evening, Gary and Rodney. My question tonight is a recruiting question, specifically regarding back counters. If there's a spot from the previous year on the 25-man signing class, can an early enrollee that will sign in February be assigned to that spot, or does it have to be filled by a prep school transfer or junior college player?
You know what, Plateau? I need to look at the rule because I think it was supposed to change this year on those guys on terms of back counters. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, on how it stands right now. It was you could take a guy if he enrolled early in January. If he had a spot open from the year before, you could apply him towards then if he enrolled in January. That was supposed to phase out, I thought. I thought it was this year. I don't know, but I'll check on that for sure.
All right, thanks for the phone call. Let's go to Fayette and talk to Gary. Hey, Gary, what's going on, man? Gary, you with us? All right, Gary is not there. A question, will Alabama sign a running back in this upcoming class?
Well, if they can get the right one. I mean, you know, they're certainly recruiting some guys, you know, Gary, around the country. There's a lot of top running backs. You know, we certainly address a lot of those guys on TighterInsider.com. And, you know, again, I think when you look at Alabama's situation in terms of running backs, the guys they have here, I mean, you know, you have T.J. Yeldon, obviously, Kenyon Drake, Derrick Henry, you know, Alti Tenpenny, Tyron Jones,
possibly Bo Scarborough.
So obviously you have a stable. But again, you know how these guys, like a T.J. Yeldon, he could possibly leave early. You know, there's even been talk that maybe Kenyon Drake, if he has a good year, he might also decide to leave early. So, you know, suddenly you could be down in terms of the numbers, and you know you don't want to do that. But I think if they get the right guy, yeah, I could see it happening.
All right, we're going to take a timeout, but more phone calls, emails, and remember, you can reach us on Twitter, #TighterInsiderTV. In fact, our producer, B.J. Milliken, he loves it when you reach out to us on Twitter. He is a Twitter guy, does it in his sleep. So if you want to get a question on for sure, #TighterInsiderTV, and we will get it on. We'll be back with more right after this. Probably not the best timing from Alabama's perspective to have one of the marquee names in college basketball history coming to town, but that's what's going to happen. UCLA Bruins announcing on their website their non-conference schedule being released today. That includes the back end of a home-and-home arrangement with the Alabama Crimson Tide. The return game will be this December 28th at Coleman Coliseum. That's over the Christmas break, so students won't be here, but still ought to be a great game. Alabama was tied 67-67 with under a minute to go last year in Poly Pavilion before UCLA scored the final 8 points to win it 75-67. All right, let's get right back to the Med Center hotline, and let's go down to Sylacauga and talk with our buddy Charles. Hey, Charles, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, man?
You the man. You tell me.
Yeah, why all the other coaches keep taking jabs at Nick Saban?
Well, we talked about it with Christopher Walsh. I mean, you know, he's on top. I mean, I know some people don't want to give him the credit, but the facts remain, as Chris was pointing out, in the last 6 years, Alabama's won 72 games. That's an average of 12 a year. No other program in history has done that. 3 national championships in the last 5 years. Deep into every season, other than 2007, his first year, Alabama's been in contention for the SEC and national championship. And, you know, it's like in recruiting. Saban always says once you commit to somebody, everybody else knows who to go after. Well, it's kind of like that now with coaches. Everybody wants to get where Alabama's at, and he's, you know, he's fair game.
Yeah, he is. You know, the jealousy. You know, there were times in Bryant's career that, you know, certainly there were coaches that attacked him or said things when when Alabama was on top. And I think this is certainly a comparable situation. And it just seems like sometimes when he says things, he's almost a lightning rod.
All right, it's going to continue too. And I tell you what, I think there are a lot of coaches, and I sent you an email about this. I talked with a coaching buddy, it's an assistant coach of mine at a Division I program, that told me that they think a lot of coaches feel like Alabama's ripe for the picking this year.
They have.
We will see. All right, let's get to an email, and this one comes to us from Ronald in Gadsden. With Kenyon Drake and Saban's doghouse, who do you feel will be the number 2 running back? Well, first of all, Ronald, Coach Saban hasn't said a lot about Kenyon Drake, whether he's in a doghouse or not. But if your premise is correct, certainly Derrick Henry's right there. Alti Timpenny's looking to make a move, but I still think Drake is going to factor in. But how do you see an answer?
No, I mean, I think it is difficult. I think situation would determine who the guy that would go in behind T.J. Yeldon. Just depending on this situation. But I think all 3 of those guys will play. I certainly think they all 3 have a role. And Kenyon Drake brings something different to the table with his explosiveness, his speed, his quickness, the things that he can make happen, the big plays, and his ability as a receiver.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and thanks for the emails. Active show tonight. Why not? Football practice begins on Friday. Stick around. Next, we'll see Nick Saban as you've probably never seen him before. In fact, I can guarantee you you've never seen him like this before. But coaches and ESPN, coaches do things for them they don't do for anybody else. We'll show it to you next. Plus, it's a beautiful evening in Tuscaloosa. And remember, if you missed any of tonight's show, including our discussion with Christopher Walsh, you can find it on our website, WVUATV.com, or a replay tonight right here at 10:30. We'll be back to wrap up the show right after this. Stay with us.
Are you flexible if I said, I'd like you to wear a hat a couple times this year?
I wouldn't wear one in a game. I'll wear one for you in the cage.
Can I put something on and see if you like it?
I would assume I won't, but you can.
Why won't you wear that in the game?
If it enhances my image, I'll wear it.
I think it looks great. Oh, I didn't know how to do that.
All right, Rod, next press conference for Coach Saban. You going to take a hat over there and ask him to put it on?
I don't think so.
That's Coach Saban with ESPN's Colin Cowherd in the cage, a segment from last week when they did the car wash up at ESPN, the Alabama coaches did. They'll do stuff for ESPN they won't do for anybody else, but I guess that's why they're the worldwide leader. But we're Tider Insider TV. We're glad you're with us. It's dinner time. We're headed to Buddy's Rib and Steak in Northport. Going to hang out with our good friend Philip Guy and the folks. And I'm going to eat a big steak, Rod. I know you'll probably stick with chicken. All right, we'll see you next week. Have a good night, everybody.